is the Next Level Loan Officers podcast. To learn more about Next Level Loan Officers, go to becomnl.com.
Hey friends, Zalmanoff here, your host of the Next Level Loan Officers podcast. And I've made an incredibly huge decision in my life that I'm going to share the mindset behind today that I think will greatly help you. You are listening to the Next Level Loan Officers podcast, the number one podcast for loan officers, by loan officers. And I am so excited to share this journey with you today. The mindset, the steps that I put in place to get here, how it came to be, and how all of those pieces fell together. Because I know that it's easy right now when we come off the years that we've had to where we're at right now, sometimes have a little bit of a weaker mindset. And I just want to be able to help you. So for the next 10 or 15 minutes, put down what you're doing, put in your earbuds, listen to me, and maybe take a few notes, because it just might be exactly what you need to hear today. So, one thing that I've really come to understand in the last several months is that you do life or life does you, but no matter what, it always ends the same for all of us. And as I started to think about this and really put this statement together for myself, there's so many things we talk about in Next Level. We talk about our fitness, family, faith, and finance. And as I think about where I'm at in my life, and most of my life, I've been really fortunate. I've done life, done it by my own terms, and dictated how I need things done. But there's some times where you get stuck in a rut, and all of a sudden, without a little bit of reflecting, you don't realize, but life's been doing you for a little bit. You're in this rut, and you're stuck. And if you don't take a minute for self-reflection, if you don't take a minute to look at the stories you're telling yourself, if you don't take a minute to check in with yourself, man, you can all of a sudden be in a position for a whole lot of years that you're not happy at anymore. And I don't want in any area of your life for you to be stuck in that position for too long. I just talked a few weeks ago about our 90-day season and how we incorporate that, how I incorporate that into my being every single day. And this is, again, every 90 days, I'm able to check in with myself. If you haven't listened to that podcast, you should go back and do so. But this is how I check in with myself. This is how I plan my goals. This is how I decide what's next. This is also how I make sure that I'm not stuck in a rut for too long, and that I can be the best person for the people that I work with, for most importantly, for my family, for my children, for myself. And really, it needs to be for yourself first. Because if you're not the best person for you, you can't be the best person for everyone else. It got me thinking about Jack Welch. So Jack Welch, it was the CEO of GE from 1981 until 2001. He led General Electric in transformative years. And, GE owns a massive boatload of companies. He actually started at GE 21 years before that. In 1960, he had a 41-year career there, and quite an epic story. So one of the things that Jack Welch did as CEO is he sold off a lot of GE. There were companies that were making hundreds of millions of dollars a year. But his philosophy was, if they couldn't be number one or number two in said industry that they were in, they had to cut it. So you have a company that's making $200 million a year, $300 million, maybe $1 billion a year for GE. And they sold off those companies because they couldn't be number one or number two. Now, it'd be really nice if somebody listening to this, or myself, if I was making $100 million a year, but that is not the case for really any loan officer that I know. But as I think about the principles, so, I love listening to Warren Buffett, reading about Warren Buffett, Jeff Bezos, Jack Welch. I mean, these gentlemen, along with Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, I mean, these industry leaders in business, some of them were really great dudes. Some of them I'm not going to take too much advice on my family from. But as I look at business and I look at decisions that they make, amazing, smart individuals. And so when Jack Welch said, we're going to sell off every company that we're not number one or number two at, I start to do some introspection. And so I look at the things in my life, and Jack Welch really works for me. And this number one or two concept really works for me because I'm a really competitive individual. And I like to excel and I like to be the best at what I do. And so I start to look at the things that I'm doing with my family. Like, are we the best at it? Am I giving it my all? Does this serve me to do those things? I talked about stories earlier. And there's something that we believe in next level. The story you tell yourself the most is the story you believe the most. And the story you believe the most is the story you tell yourself the most. Again, this is why that 90-day season, I mentioned this podcast earlier that I just did. If you haven't listened to it, you should go listen to it, because as you evolve, as you go from one season to the next, as you think about what you're doing from this 90 days to that 90 days, it has an monumental change and impact on your life. And they build one after another. And it's just like the stories that we tell ourselves. Most of the thoughts that we have as human beings, because of the way that we're wired, like 80% of these thoughts are negative. I'll tell you more about that. It's not our fault. It's ingrained in our DNA from hundreds of thousands, millions of years of evolution. But I started to think about the things in my business. Am I the absolute best at my job that I can be? If I'm not, what resources do I need? As a loan officer, man, what do I love about being a loan officer? What are the number one and two things that I can be the absolute best in my market? Do I crush it with online leads? No, me, not personally. It's not something I'm going to put on my list. Am I amazing when I get in front of realtors and talk to them? Do I kill it on the phone when I talk to clients? Do I engage with them? Do I make them like me? Do I build that know, like, and trust? Do I build that rapport? You need to focus on those things. We get so distracted with all of these shiny objects. And if we can just focus on those things that we are the best at, we will win and we will dominate. So again, most of us aren't building, $100+ million organizations. I ran a very successful region of a really large mortgage bank for quite a few years. And in some later podcasts, I'm going to tell you about my huge decision. We've been closing over $300 million in business for a fair amount of years. I will be sharing some thoughts later in other podcasts. See, that's the hook. I'm going to get you to come back for more on what this decision is. But it's led me to some drastic life changes, because I refuse to not be the best at what I do, no matter what the circumstances that lay out in front of me for that are. Again, you need to do that. Life is too short, everybody. If you want to be the best, you've got to make a decision that you will make things in your life and even temporary sacrifices happen in order to be the best at what you do. So I was just talking about, this 80% of negative thoughts that we have in our life. And I was just reading a book recently by Mike Robbins. It's called Focus on the Good Stuff. It's a book about appreciation. And so what Mike was talking about in the book. So Mike was a pitcher for the Kansas City Royals in the mid-90s. And Mike had an amazing killer arm. He was going to be one of the second comings of Cy Young, as so many young pitchers are. And in the mid-90s, he blew out his elbow, had to have surgery on it, and afterwards realized that 3 years later, after he threw his last pitch, that 3 years ago, that was his last pitch. And so, like many young talents, he didn't end up becoming the second coming of Cy Young. And so in this book that he wrote, Focus on the Good Stuff, and where he really goes into appreciation, there was one story that he laid out inside of there. And, as you go back 5,000, 6,000, maybe 7,000 years, and, our ancestors were all hanging out around the Nile River. There is lush green grass everywhere. Rivers flowing, so much beauty, so much positivity, so many things to be appreciative for. But most people didn't stop then and smell the proverbial roses or whatever else lush and beautiful was growing at that time. You know why? Do you know why? All right. Well, maybe some of you guessed the answer by now. Maybe some of you didn't, but they didn't because they were lions trying to eat them. If you weren't paying attention to your surroundings, if you weren't plugged into your primordial instincts, you could die. Not the kind of place you want to be in. Maybe an elephant can trample on you, but you probably at least hear them coming. But that lion could jump out of that tree at any minute and eat you, and you would die. So, not the position you want to be in. So as we live in the society that we are today, as we think about these primordial instincts that are wired into our DNA, millions of years of wiring inside of our DNA. And now we have to shift this mindset because, we've domesticated animals, we domesticated ourselves. We are able to live, with these light shining in our faces, there's roofs over our head, record podcasts in studios or in offices like mine right now. And we have changed the environment drastically, but we're still dealing with how we're made as individuals, how God put us on this planet, and how we evolved with all of these great things that are in front of us right now. So how we're wired, if we don't focus on the good things, if we don't appreciate things in our life, then we have struggles. Then we need to change how we are doing what we are doing. It got me thinking about another quote that I've heard very often, and it takes as much energy to plan as it does to wish. And so sometimes when I'm sitting down, when I'm just like getting my own brain dumping, when I'm thinking about where I want to go, I just write, just let it all flow out. I got one of these nice remarkables, so I can erase it real quickly, or cut and paste or move stuff around if I need to. But it helps me get my wishes down, which then I can turn into a plan and really execute on. Again, it all goes back to how I live my life in these 90-day seasons and how I make sure by checking in over time that my mindset is right and I continue to grow as an individual. So when I am met with adversity, when it's in my face, I am able to do something different and I am able to meet this adversity head on. So I hope you're thinking about all the adversity that you have in your life, the challenges. Hey, if you need some help with that right now, you can go right over to nlstrategycall.com. So if you just go over to nlstrategycall.com, if you happen to be watching this on YouTube or some other place that we have this hosted, it's going across your screen right now, nlstrategycall.com. We would love to help you get clarity. We'd love to help you get power in your life, get your mindset right, and make sure that you are living and being your best you. We are here for you. We are here to help you grow. The world is changed by your actions, not your opinions and thoughts. That's why there's all these keyboard cowboys out there. They're on Facebook, they're on Twitter, they're on Instagram. They work in your office. There's these people that type these emails that you're like, that guy would never say that to my face. I can't believe they're putting that inside of an email. It's your actions that matter, not your thoughts. Actions that matter. That sounds familiar. Oh, yeah. We talk about those in Next Level all the time. ATMs, the things that you break down, the things that you do on a daily basis, because it's actions that are important. You got to have the right stories that you tell yourself. You have to be appreciative. You have to continually look at where you are so you're moving the needle forward in your mind and in your business. And all of these things make sure that you're on the right path for your fitness, for your finances, for your family, for your faith, to make sure that you are doing what you need to do for you. Now, I told you about this huge decision that I've made. And it's really important. Like there's a lot to unpack in this decision, how I made it, how it came to be, and what's next for me. But that's not what this podcast is about. Today, what you just heard, this podcast is about checking in with yourself. This podcast is about making sure you're right. In the next episode, I will tell you about the decision I made. I'll tell you the thought that went into it. I'll unpack a lot of what I said inside of here, talking about those lions that are chasing you, talking about being the best at what you do. Those things 150,000% influenced my decision to make sure and reinforce my decision that I know I made the right choice for myself. But you're going to have to tune in next time to hear that. Guys, again, if you need help, nlstrategycall.com. Let one of us get on the call with you. Let us get on the horn. Let us help you and get your mind right, get your head right. We love loan officers. This is why we created the podcast. This is why Next Level exists. The number one podcast for loan officers by loan officers. Everybody, I appreciate you. Have an amazing and awesome day. Peace out.